A very warm welcome. You're watching World 360 with me, Akanksha Swaroop. China continues to threaten peace in the Indo-Pacific as it continues to provoke India and Taiwan. Can such a country that's failed to respect territorial boundaries of other nations be expected to play peacemaker between Russia and Ukraine? We'll delve deeper into that, but first up are the headlines. In a third attempt to claim stake over Arunachal Pradesh, Beijing renames places in the Indian state. We ask, is it time for India to de-Sinicise Chinese names for Tibet and East Turkestan renamed Xinjiang by China? China begins live-fire drills in the seas facing the Taiwan Strait in military drills for 3 days from Saturday after Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen returned from her visits to the US. French President Macron urges Chinese President Xi to pressure Moscow for peace in Ukraine. Xi warns of escalating crisis during his meet with Macron. And Donald Trump pleads not guilty to 34 felony counts, becoming the first former US president to turn criminal defendant as he repeats claims of a political witch hunt by the Democrats. Trump is due back in court in December. And so I was telling you earlier, China has provoked India once again. And it's the dragon's third attempt to unilaterally rename territories in a state that's very much an integral part of India. On Sunday, China released names of 11 places in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh, calling the northeastern state as Zangnan, which translates to the southern part of Tibet, clearly laying basis for the One Tibet policy. The list of names released by China include 5 mountain peaks, 2 land areas, 2 residential areas and 2 rivers. India has reacted sharply by rejecting Chinese attempts to assign invented names. The naming of territories with new nomenclature has in fact been an old tactic of the Chinese government. Beijing has renamed areas in parts of Arunachal Pradesh in April 2017 and December 2021 as well. Now, the latest affront comes when the two countries are locked into a military confrontation in Ladakh for 3 winters now, followed by violent incidents in the eastern sector of India. And issues are rising from China's violation of existing bilateral border agreements that remain unresolved.
藏南地区是中国领土。根据国务院地名管理的有关规定，中国政府主管部门对我国藏南地区的部分地名进行了标准化处理，这完全是中国主权范围之内的事情。
Needless to say, the situation remains a geopolitical conundrum for India. What should India's approach be? Let's try and gain some perspective from my guest, Brahma Chalani, who is a geostrategist, also Professor of Strategic Studies at the Center for Policy Research in New Delhi. Many thanks to you, Professor Chalani, for joining in. Now, it's the third time that China is making territorial claims in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. This, of course, is an attempt that's laying the basis of One Tibet policy. How should New Delhi approach the situation when Beijing is not even giving any weight to Indian admonitions?
But it would be a mistake on India's part to dismiss the Chinese move as little more than a meaningless effort to rename places under Indian control. It's very important to remember why the Land Borders Law was enacted. The Land Borders Law was enacted by China a year and a half after its encroachments in Ladakh. And it was enacted primarily with the aim of advancing China's territorial revisionism. The law effectively negates the possibility of peacefully resolving the territorial disputes with India. Instead of mutually settled borders, the law enables unilaterally imposed borders.
Right.
So what we are seeing is a systematic effort to advance China's territorial claims. And what we are also seeing is rolling annexation. First, China annexes Tibet, which historically was a buffer between India and China, because China was never India's neighbor until it became the occupier of Tibet. And having occupied Tibet, now it's laying claims to Indian territories on the basis of their alleged historical links with Tibet. So given this background, why are we still calling Tibet an integral part of the People's Republic of China? That policy is so counterproductive.
Right. Professor Chilani, former diplomats and foreign policy analysts are saying that it's time for India to de-Sinicise Chinese names like that of Xinjiang, which is the Chinese name for East Turkestan. And should India be even respectful of Chinese sensibilities when it comes to Tibet?
India is imposing no tangible costs on China. In fact, China is able to reap growing trade surplus with India year after year. Last year, the Chinese trade surplus with India exceeded more than $100 billion. So India needs a wiser, more forward-looking China policy, not a more muscular China policy, but a wiser China policy that leverages India's strength, including India's buying power and diplomatic strength. India should be less reactive and more proactive. But on the issue of Tibet, given the fact that China's claims on Indian territories are based on its occupation of Tibet, it is self-defeating for India to still cling to the stance that Tibet is an integral part of China. India must adopt a slightly revised approach, including referring to the Himalayan frontier by its historical name, Indo-Tibetan frontier. Historically, that frontier was always called the Indo-Tibetan frontier. We have been calling it the India-China frontier, which it is not. It should be called by its historically correct name, Indo-Tibetan frontier. And we should show in our official maps that India borders Tibet, not China. Because when we show that China is our immediate neighbor, we are legitimizing China's occupation of Tibet. So without abandoning our Tibet policy, we need to add nuance that has strategic meaning.
Very well said. Many thanks to you, Professor Chilani, for breaking down that entire story for us. But India is not the only country that's being provoked by China at the moment. Let's now shift attention over to the Taiwan Strait, where China is raising the specter of war again by conducting 3-day military drills near Taiwan. Beijing is calling these drills the United Sharp Sword. They will run until Monday and are meant as a stern warning to Taiwan. The PLA's Eastern Theatre Command has made an announcement in a statement. This exercise will also include live-fire drills off the coast of China's Fujian province. China's Coast Guard is calling it a special joint patrol and inspection operation. This so-called inspection covers the center and northern areas of the Taiwan Strait that also involves attempts to board Chinese ships. Now, a video has surfaced online affiliated to the China Media Group, also known as the CMG. It shows a maritime law enforcement fleet led by a patrol and rescue vessel already dispatched. The massive cargo ship was patrolling in the central and northern waters of the Taiwan Straits. Now, the Chinese officers are conducting a pre-departure check on a cross-strait cargo ship berthing at the Jinping Wharf in Pingtan. It's the mainland's closest point to Taiwan. The Maritime and Ports Bureau of Taiwan's Transport Ministry has released later that it has strongly protested the action to China. So what's caused this latest escalation in tensions between China and Taiwan? Simply because Taiwan's president has been hosted in the United States. Tsai Ing-wen held a meeting with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California, the third senior-most person in the United States government. Moreover, U.S. lawmakers have also visited Taiwan in a show of strength for Taipei, in a clear message to Beijing, of course. But China is not upset with just this meeting. The Taiwanese president has formally asked for more American weapons. According to media reports, the United States plans to quadruple the number of U.S. troops stationed in Taiwan from 30 to between 100 and 200.
美台相互勾连，以过境。
The United States and Taiwan are colluding with each other, using transit as a pretext to condone Taiwan independent separatists to engage in political activities in the United States, carry out official exchanges between the United States and Taiwan, and enhance substantive relations between the United States and Taiwan. China will take resolute and strong measures to firmly defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
和领土完整。
China has been conducting drills frequently till today after Pelosi's visit last year. They claimed those drills as normal exercises. Every day, if the weather condition is stable, the PLA would send 10 to 20 military aircrafts to the north or southwest of Taiwan across the midline of the Taiwan Strait.
但这个地方不跟各位多谈这个。
And unwavering support reassure the people of Taiwan that we are not isolated and we are not alone. I also highlighted a belief which President Reagan championed, that to preserve peace, we must be strong. I would like to add that we're stronger when we are together.
We must continue the arms sales to Taiwan and make sure such sales reach Taiwan on a very timely basis. Second, we must strengthen our economic cooperation, particularly with trade and technology. Third, we must continue to promote our shared values on the world stage.
So as Taipei continues to strengthen its relationship with Washington, Beijing is clearly threatened by this situation. Let's try and delve deeper into this geopolitical development. And for that, I'm joined in by William Yang, who's a journalist. He's the East Asia correspondent with DW News. Thank you so much, William, for joining in. Now, do you see Tsai's visit to the United States as a diplomatic tightrope walk between US and China, one that's ushered an era of greater American cooperation?
Yeah, I would say Tsai is basically essentially doubling down on the success that she's had throughout her tenure over the last 7 years by deepening ties with the United States. And this meeting and also the trip, despite simply was officially described as a stopover and through transit, is in fact another breakthrough because previous presidents have not been able to meet American officials at that level during their transit, but Tsai was able to do it. It shows the level of trust that she has in Washington, and at the same time, the willingness that the United States is offering her chances to really deepening ties, but at the same time celebrating the success that she's been able to produce over the years while as she's a president of Taiwan. And of course, I think Beijing was not particularly happy with the visit meeting, but at the same time, we also see that they did not respond at the same level of aggression as what they did after former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan last August.
William, the rising China-US tensions are driving an arms race in the Indo-Pacific, something that was apparent when McCarthy said that US must continue its arms sale to Taiwan. Not just Taiwan, India, Japan, South Korea and the Philippines are busy increasing defense capabilities. Has China raised the risk of war, especially in the Indo-Pacific?
The United States and its allies right above and below Taiwan are trying to build a consensus and a plan to ensure that China cannot project its naval power beyond the first island chain and deepen its influence into the Pacific. Because if that's the case, then the U.S. will definitely feel seriously threatened. And, I think that is part of the big, strategic consideration for a lot of the military and defense arrangement and also dialogue that we've seen over the last few years have emerged. I think Quad plays a very important role, and India, of course, is a very important member in that group. And we are also seeing India really, stepping up and playing a more important role in facilitating and connecting different partners all the way down to Australia and all the way up to Japan. So I think these emerging security alliance is going to play a very important role going forward. But of course, that also just means that possibilities of any kind of miscalculation from either side is going to increase with the beef up of and also more frequent security activities that we're witnessing in the Indo-Pacific region.
All right. Many thanks to you, William, for sharing those precious inputs. Now, the French President Emmanuel Macron has visited China this week. He's an embattled leader who's left his own country burning, ironically, only to find peace for another. Paris has been burning, but Macron is hoping to help secure Kiev. We'll come to Paris in just a bit, but here's what happened when Macron met Xi. Beijing rolled out its red carpet to two of Europe's top leaders, Macron and EU President Ursula von der Leyen, primarily opening its doors for business. But while Beijing seeks to intensify trade ties, the EU wants to gradually break out of dependence. And the most pressing engagement for Europe is for China to play a more constructive role in the war in Ukraine. But Macron was the one who spent the most time across China. China's Xi Jinping has given French President an unusually lavish welcome on a state visit. They drank tea in a former residence of Xi's father in the city of Guangzhou. Such forays by Xi with visiting leaders are very rare. The two countries having discussed everything from the study of lunar samples to the restoration of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, but their joint statement on the talks said little about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, despite Macron's efforts to persuade China's leader to do more to help end this war. And with that, let me shift focus over to the United States. It's been a marathon week for the former U.S. President Donald Trump. The blurring of the lines between his White House bid and his mounting court battles is at the center of a high-stakes battle. After Trump's indictment and arraignment drama, it has become impossible to tell where his legal defense ends and his presidential campaign begins. He has declared himself the victim of election interference without offering any evidence. And latest reports suggest that Donald Trump is in talks to hire Laura Loomer to work on his presidential campaign. But certain media organizations have now confirmed that Laura Loomer will not be hired. This due to the backlash that took place within Team Trump. Loomer is a far-right and anti-Muslim activist with a history of expressing bigoted views. She once described Islam as a cancer and tweeted under the hashtag Proud Islamophobe. And as of now, it is unclear whether she will serve on his campaign. Reports are indicating that she will not. On the other side, the White House has blamed Trump for the chaotic Afghanistan pullout. Biden administration has released review saying president's option was severely constrained by decisions of his predecessor.
Well, while it was always the president's intent to end that war, it is also undeniable that decisions made and the lack of planning done by the previous administration significantly limited options available to him. President Biden inherited a forced presence in Afghanistan of some 2,500 troops. That was the lowest since 2001. He inherited a special immigrant visa program that had been starved of resources. And he inherited a deal struck between the previous administration and the Taliban that called for the complete removal of all U.S. troops by May of 2021, or else the Taliban, which had stopped its attacks while the deal was in place, would go back to war against the United States.
We have to save our country. God bless you all. God bless you all. And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately.
How do you feel about potentially testifying in a trial that will be watched around the world?
I mean, anytime you're up in the public eye, it's scary. I mean, I used to get scared giving an oral book report in school. So, I mean, it's daunting, but I look forward to it. You know what I mean? Because I have nothing to hide. I'm the only one that has been telling the truth. And, you know, you can't shame me any more. So I feel like if they don't, it paints the picture that they know something about me that makes me, you know, untrustworthy or not reliable.
So you want to have your
I do. I think having them call me in and put me on the stand legitimizes my story and who I am. And if they don't, it almost feels like they're hiding me. And people will automatically assume I would that, oh, that she must not be a good witness. She's not credible. Like,
so there's no doubt if they ask you to testify, you will testify.
Oh, absolutely.
And with that, I bring you the latest from France. Paris is burning. Thousands have been out on the streets of Paris and other cities against the pension reforms. Protesters have targeted restaurants and cafes frequented by President Emmanuel Macron and have set a number of them on fire. Rioters have broken out with flares being shot at the police. Up to 800,000 people are thought to be out protesting in France as discussions between Macron's government and French unions over pension reforms are still in a deadlock. And with that, it's time for a quick break on World 360, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back with the latest as far as King Charles's coronation in the UK is concerned. Be back in just a bit.
The bill. That's how it